Hello friends! In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to draw a group of cute plant pals. I'm going to break the process down step by step so you can achieve this no matter your skill level. Let's dive in. I will be drawing on the iPad using the Procreate app version 5.4, and I have my canvas set to 3000 by 4000 pixels at 300 dpi. We're going to need about 26 layers for this drawing, so if you don't have enough storage on your iPad for a file this large, you can use the pre-formatted screen size canvas, which will give you the same aspect ratio but at a smaller size and lower resolution. If you'd like to use the same colors I'll be using, you can download the color palette and import it directly into Procreate. Or if you're using a different app, you can pull the hex codes from the color card I created for you. I've also created a template with the basic plant pot shapes, which you can use as a guide to make the process as easy as possible. There's a link in the description for these free downloads, but if you're one of my email subscribers, be sure to check your inbox because I've already sent you the template and the color palette. Before we start drawing, I'd love if you'd like, comment, subscribe, and watch till the very end because it really helps the channel. If you plan to use the template, let's import that first. Go to the Actions menu, tap Add, tap Insert a Photo, and if you already downloaded and saved the template, find it in your camera roll and tap to import. So here we have the 6 plant pot shapes we'll be using, and these gray dotted lines just indicate the parts of the pot that will be hidden behind another plant. You'll also see these short red vertical lines either below or above each pot. I'll show you how those will come in handy as we get into the drawing process. But for now, we're going to go to that template layer and turn the opacity down so that it's visible but not too distracting. Then create a new layer above the template. Choose your favorite sketching pencil. I'll be using Huntsman, which is in the pencil set of the Procreate library. The first thing we're going to do is add a plant to each pot. So let's start with the second pot, and we're going to add a cactus. So I'm just going to start with a vertical line, kind of in the center of the pot. And that's just going to help me determine how tall the cactus is going to be. Then I'm going to add a curved shape around that line. Basically an upside down, super stretched out U shape. Then we can add an L to the left side for the first arm, and then just round that out. Then we can flip that shape for the arm on the right side. We can make this one a little shorter and have it sit lower down on the cactus. And I'm just going to use the eraser tool to clean up that shape a little. And you can add a few short V shapes for the spines. You can switch it up so some have 3 little spines in a cluster, while others just have 2. And then erase the edges of the line so it looks like the plant is coming out of the pot. Okay, now that we've got that one in place, we can go back and add a plant to this first pot, but we're going to do this on a separate layer since the two will overlap slightly. So create a new layer, start with a vertical line in the center of that pot, and you can make it about the height of this large pot in the background. Then you're going to add a shorter diagonal line on each side. Now add a circle to the top of each of those lines, and this will just be the framework for our flowers. Now you can use those circles as a guide to draw the 3 simple flowers. And this third one will be partially hidden behind the cactus. Add a couple leaves to those stems. And if you want to, you can erase the parts of the third flower that will be hidden behind the cactus. Don't forget to erase the ends of those stems as well. By the way, I'm using the Stanley brush as my eraser, and you can find it in the basic set of the Procreate library. While we're on this second sketch layer, let's move on to plant number 3. Let's start with an almond-shaped vertical leaf right in the center. And you want to make sure it's not too tall because we need to leave enough space to add a face to the pot in the background. Once we've marked that first leaf, we can add a diagonal leaf to the right and make sure it overlaps that center leaf. Do the same on this side as well, and this leaf will slightly overlap the cactus. Then we can fill the remaining space with 2 much smaller leaves on either side. And don't forget to erase that bottom section that will be hidden inside the pot. Now the plant in this fourth pot will overlap the one next to it slightly. So let's go back to that other sketch layer so that we can draw it without interrupting this plant. So we're going to draw 4 leaves, and first let's use lines to figure out the placement. This first leaf can curve to the left so it sits behind this plant. Then we can have a second leaf kind of curved inward towards this background pot, maybe one going in this direction. And the last leaf, let's have it falling in front of the pot. Now you can go ahead and fill out those leaf shapes. I'm going to turn my canvas all the way around so I can get a better angle for this one. And you can use the selection and transform tools to kind of nudge things around so you get exactly the shape you want. Erase the bottom part of the leaves that will be hidden inside the pot. I'm also going to erase this part of the leaf on the left that will be hidden behind this foreground plant. Okay, on to plant number 5. Let's make these leaves a little bit smaller than this, and we can aim to fill this open space created by this plant. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a stem that's curved in that direction and finish that off with a medium-sized leaf. Then fill the rest of the pot with a few more stems and leaves. And remember, you can always make adjustments as you go along. Don't forget to erase the bottom of those stems. Okay, just one more pot to fill, and for this one, let's add a plant with small leaves so we have a nice variety of sizes throughout the illustration. Just going to start out with 5 or 6 stems curved in different directions. Then we can add small round leaves down the length of each stem. And lastly, erase the ends of those stems. Okay, if you're happy with how your plants look, you can pinch those 2 sketch layers together to merge them. Next, we're going to add the cute little faces. So for the first pot, let's start with 2 simple crescent shapes for the eyes. And for the mouth, start with a horizontal line, and it can be slightly angled. And then just add a half circle below that and fill the shape. Then lightly draw circles below each of the eyes for the rosy cheeks. Now let's have this face looking at the pot next to it. So we're going to start with 2 lines on a really slight diagonal. And then you're going to add a solid circle to the right side of each of those lines. You can thicken up the diagonal a little bit just so it's not quite so narrow. And a trick to remember when you're drawing these cutesy kawaii style faces is that you want to keep the eyes really wide set. You don't want them to be too close together. And the placement of the mouth is usually really exaggerated. So it's really high up, very close to the eyes, kind of in the spot where you would expect a nose to be. Now to help make it look like this guy is looking off to the right, we can just add a little white dot to the right side of each of those eyes. Let's also give him 2 tiny little eyebrows. Just 2 really short curves above the eyes, and don't forget his little cheeks. All right, for this one, let's give this one closed eyes. So this time we're going to draw 2 basically U shapes. Then add the mouth to the center. And we're going to add eyebrows, but this time let's position them a little off to the side rather than directly above the eyes like we did here. So just 2 short crescent shapes off to the side. And of course, we can't forget those rosy cheeks. So now it looks like this pot is admiring this one, and this one is a little shy with all the attention. So you can see that we can build a bit of a narrative with the expressions we choose. All right, for the 4th pot, let's switch it up and give this one round eyes. So we're just going to draw 2 solid circles. Maybe you can add a little line on the side for eyelashes. This one will be hidden by the plant. And this cutie is a little frustrated because her leaf keeps falling in her eyes because it needs a trim. So let's make the mouth slightly angled and curved, and then just add a little line to the right side. Now, if we were to draw a straight horizontal line for the mouth, it would read as angry, but the slight tilt and curve helps to soften that emotion a bit. Don't forget to add the cheeks. Then we can add 2 white dots on the right side to make it a little bit more obvious that she's looking at this leaf. Now for this plant, let's go with the crescent shapes for the eyes. But we're going to add another shorter line to make it look like the eyes are squinting from a big smile. That mouth is going to be in the center, really close to the eyes. And then you can add those cheeks right below each eye. And finally, we've got this big pot in the background. For this one, we can give him a worried expression because he's nervous that the cactus in front of him might accidentally poke him in the face. So for the eyes, we're going to do the opposite of what we did for this pot. So start with 2 slightly diagonal lines going in the opposite direction. So it's slightly lower on the left and higher on the right. But keep in mind, you don't want the angle to be too steep because that will read as angry. And we just want him to look a little bit worried. Now add that solid circle right below. And again, you can thicken up that line. And since he's a bit worried, we're going to have a slightly downturned mouth and we're going to have upturned eyebrows. So just a really short curved line kind of off to the side of each eye. And we can add his cheeks. And then for the white dots, let's add them kind of to the left and looking down a little bit. Now, if you want to, you can add a simple pattern to each pot. You don't want to overdo it and make it too busy, but a couple of wavy lines or stripes or even scallop shapes can make things look a little bit more whimsical and fun. Our sketch is all done. Now it's time to start inking. So let's turn off the sketch layer for now. Turn the opacity back up on the template layer until the red vertical lines are easier to see. We're going to be using 2 brushes for this piece. We're going to draw and fill the shapes with the Liffey brush, which is in the pen set of the Procreate library. If you'd like to see a preview of how this brush works, you can watch this brush review video, which I'll link to in the corner and in the description. And then for the shading and to add some soft texture, we're going to use Florentine, which is in the charcoal set of the Procreate library. I've shared a brush review video for this one as well, which I'll also link in the corner and in the description below. If you draw a quick scribble test with each brush on this new layer, they will both show up in the recent section of the brush library. So we can just come here to switch back and forth rather than constantly scrolling through the library to find each brush. I'm just going to clear out that scribble, go to the palette and choose the color Creamsicle and make sure you have the Liffey brush selected. And if you go to the Actions menu under Preferences, make sure that brush scaling is set to Canvas. We're going to ink the first pot, and to make it quick and easy, we're going to use the Symmetry feature. So go to the Actions menu, tap Canvas, tap Drawing Guide, then tap Edit Drawing Guide. Change the mode to Symmetry. Then you're going to tap on the blue node in the center of the guide and drag the guide to the left until it lines up with that red vertical line. Then tap the blue check mark to exit. Now the word Assisted should appear on that new layer, confirming that we're using the Drawing Assist feature, and the vertical line lets us know that we're in Symmetry mode. Now we can ink one side of the pot and it will be mirrored on the other side, which will help to speed up our workflow. Make sure that your shape is complete and there are no open areas, then drag the swatch into the shape to fill. All right, now create a new layer, turn on Drawing Assist, then choose the color Salmon. Go back to the Actions menu, Tap Edit Drawing Guide, then move the guide over so it lines up with the next red line. Now, part of the template is hidden by the first pot we inked, but that's okay because we only need to see half of it anyway since we're using the Symmetry feature. Now remember that the Liffey brush is pressure sensitive, so try to keep the pressure consistent so that the size of your lines don't shift too much. Don't worry, that pressure sensitivity will come in handy later. All right, on to the next one. Create a new layer, turn on Drawing Assist. We're going to choose Light Salmon from the palette, back to the Actions menu, Edit Drawing Guide, and we're going to move that guideline over. Once again, we're going to outline the shape, and then color drop to fill. All right, for pot number 4, we're going to create a new layer, turn on Drawing Assist, change the color to cream this time, head back over to the Actions menu to edit that drawing guide, and move that line over. Don't be afraid to move your canvas around to whatever angle is going to make it easier for you to draw these shapes. Now this pot should be behind the third one. So go back to your layers and just drag it below the light salmon pot. Okay, on to pot number 5. I think you know the drill by now. We're going to create a new layer, turn on Drawing Assist. We're going to change the color to salmon, head over to the Actions menu, edit the drawing guide, and move that line over. Outline the shape. Then color drop, and since there's several shapes here, you can tap Continue Filling, and then just tap the other shapes to fill. We need to change the position of this pot as well, so go to that layer and drag it below the cream pot. And we've got one last pot in the background, so let's create a new layer, turn on Drawing Assist. Let's change the color to Creamsicle, back to the Actions menu, Edit Drawing Guide, and we're going to move that guide into place. And yet again, we're going to outline that shape. And you'll notice that this shape isn't complete, so go ahead and follow the outline, and then just add a horizontal line at the bottom to complete the shape. Now you might want to turn off the layers that are in front of it so that you make sure you don't have any open areas and your shape is fully enclosed. And now you can color drop. Don't forget to turn back on those other 2 layers. Now again, this pot is in the wrong position. It needs to be behind all the others. So we can just go to that layer and drag it to the bottom of the stack. Let's pause for a moment to do some quick layer management. We're going to go back to each layer, turn off Drawing Assist, then name the layer. To keep it simple, I'm just naming them according to their place in the row. So this will be pot 1, pot 2, pot 3, 4, 5, and the one in the background will be pot 6. The reason we're turning off Drawing Assist on each layer is because we don't want to accidentally invoke the Symmetry feature when we start shading the pots. We don't need the template anymore, so we can turn that layer off. And finally, we can go back to the Actions menu and turn off the drawing guide. Now we're going to turn the sketch back on. Let's drag that layer to the top of the stack, reduce the opacity, and then we're going to change the blend mode to multiply. As long as we keep the sketch layer at the top of the stack, it will always remain visible for us to use as our guide. Let's start inking these plants. Create a new layer and drag it below pot 1. Choose dark green from the palette, and we are still using the Liffey brush. We're going to go ahead and ink the leaves and stems. Since this layer is already below the layer with the pot, the ends of the stems will automatically be hidden behind that pot. Now we're going to create a new layer right above this one. Choose the color Chartreuse, then outline those flowers and color drop to fill. Change the color to ivory, and then change the brush to Florentine. And we're going to use that brush to add the circles to the center of each flower. It might actually be helpful to turn the sketch off temporarily so that you can see what your shapes look like. While the sketch layer is off and we've already got the Florentine brush selected, let's change the color to light orange and then go to the layer with pot 1. Turn on Alpha Lock on that layer. Make sure the brush size is pretty large, and then we can add some shading to the right side of the pot. I'm using more of the side of the pencil tip so that the strokes are nice and wide, but the shading remains pretty soft and subtle. So I'm adding the darker orange along the right side, and I'll add it to the foot of the pot as well, along that bottom edge and a little along the right side. And to soften the color transition, what you can do is tap and hold on the original color, the creamsicle, so that it changes the swatch. And then you can use circular motions and really light strokes to just soften that edge. All right, now you can create a new layer above the pot and make the new layer a clipping mask. Switch the brush back to Liffey. Make sure you've still got creamsicle chosen. Then open up the color disc and shift the color to the left slightly to make a lighter version of that color. Let's turn the sketch back on, and you want to make sure your brush size is fairly large. Then we're going to add a line of highlight on the left side. Make sure it doesn't overlap your pattern if you added a pattern, or it doesn't interact with the face. Now go back to the palette, change the color to orange, and drop the brush size down to about 20%, and now you can add your design. Now let's draw the face on its own layer, just in case we need to move it around a bit. So create a new layer. Now we're going to choose brown from the palette, and we're going to drop the brush size down again to about 10%. So for the eyes, start off using light pressure, then increase the pressure so the stroke gets thicker towards the outer end. Go ahead and ink the mouth and fill that with color. Then we're going to change the color to orange and switch the brush back to Florentine. Now you're going to go ahead and add those rosy cheeks. The trick here is to use a feather-like touch in a circular motion to create that subtle blush so it doesn't look like two solid circles. You can turn the sketch off to better get a sense of how that's looking. Okay, I think this first one is done. Now to keep things organized, let's group the layers for this plant. The face layer is already highlighted, so just swipe right on the 4 layers below it, tap on the down arrow at the top of the panel, then tap group. Then you can tap on the group to rename it. I'm just going to call it plant 1. Now we can move on to the second plant. Go to the layer with pot number 2, turn on Alpha Lock. We're going to choose dark salmon and make sure your brush is still set to Florentine. Go ahead and add the shading along the right side and bottom edge of the pot. When you're done shading, create a new layer right above the pot and make it a clipping mask. Change the color to light salmon and switch back to the Liffey brush. Turn that sketch back on, by the way. And now you can position your line of highlight. We're going to add the pattern to this layer as well. Feel free to use whatever color you prefer. I'm going to go with the brown. I'm going to add those stripes. And I'm actually going to fill this entire bottom section with color. The beauty of doing this on a clipping mask layer is that I don't have to worry about coloring outside the lines. We're going to ink the face next, so create a new layer, drop the brush size down quite a bit, and if you're not already using the brown, go ahead and select that color, then ink the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows. Change the color to ivory and add those little dots to the eyes. Next, we're going to change the brush back to Florentine, Then change the color to pink and color those little cheeks. All right, this pot needs its plant now. So create a new layer, choose the sage green, and let's go back to the Liffey brush and go ahead and ink the cactus shape. As you can see, this layer is sitting in front of the pot, but that's okay. We're going to change that in a minute. Just go ahead and get that shape outlined. And you're going to want to make sure to enclose the shape. So extend the lines down a little bit beyond the edge of the pot, and then you can drag and drop to fill. Now you can take that layer and drag it below the layer with pot number 2. Then you're going to turn on Alpha Lock, change the color to dark green, and we're going to go back to the Florentine brush. I'm actually going to turn the sketch off for a second as well, because we're going to add a little shading along the right side of the cactus. It's just going to be easier to see if the sketch is off. And then add that shading along the right side of this arm and a little here on this arm as well. Tap and hold on this sage to switch to that color and just soften up those color transitions a little. If you want to, you can go back to the dark green and add a couple of really subtle stripes to that cactus. And while we have the dark green selected, let's switch back to the Liffey brush and make sure the size is fairly small, 10% or so. Turn that sketch back on and make sure you turn off Alpha Lock. Now we can add those spines to the cactus. All right, I think that's it for this one. So we can select those 4 layers, group them, and name that group. Now on to plant number 3. Go to the layer with the 3rd pot, turn on Alpha Lock, change the brush to Florentine, and change the color to salmon. Just like we did before, we're going to add a little shading to the right side. And I'm going to make a more distinct line on the foot of the pot. I'm going to select that light salmon color and just soften that color transition. Now I'm going to create a new layer and make that new layer a clipping mask. Change the brush to Liffey, and I'm going to change the color to salmon. I'm going to use that for the pattern. And for the highlight, choose light salmon, which is the color of the pot. Then go to the color disc and create an even lighter version. Then you can add that highlight on the left side. Now we can ink the face. So create a new layer, change the color to brown. We're still using the Liffey brush, and you're going to want to make sure the size is pretty small. Then ink the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows. Switch the brush to Florentine and choose the color salmon. Then go ahead and color those cheeks. All right, I'll turn that sketch back on, create a new layer for the plant, go back to the Liffey brush, and I'm going to change the color to chartreuse. Now you can go ahead and ink that plant. In order to fill this shape with color, we need to enclose the shape. Then we can drag the color to fill. Let's drag that plant layer below pot 3. We're going to turn on Alpha Lock and change the color to dark green. And then I'm also going to change the brush back to Florentine. Actually, I'm going to turn the sketch off as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a stripe along the right side of each of these leaves. If you want to, you can switch the color to seafoam and just add a little highlight to the opposite side of each leaf. All right, this plant is done, so we can select those 4 layers, group them, and name that group Plant 3. All right, now let's tackle the 4th plant. So go to the Pot 4 layer, turn on Alpha Lock, and change the color to Sand. We're still using the Florentine brush. Make sure your brush size is pretty high. And again, we're going to add that shading along the right side. And I'm actually going to add a pretty distinct curve along the bottom edge. And add a little shading along the right side of the foot as well. Now I can select the cream color again and soften that color transition. Tilt your pencil down so that it's on a really low angle and you're using the side of the pencil tip. And like I mentioned before, you're just going to use some circular motions so you can get a really good blend. All right, now turn the sketch back on. And if you're going to be adding a pattern, create a new layer above the pot layer and make it a clipping mask. Switch the brush to Liffey and choose a color for your pattern. I'm just going to use that same sand color. Go ahead and ink whatever pattern you decided to draw. And the left side of this pot is hidden by the foreground plant, so we don't have to worry about a highlight. So let's just move on to drawing the face. So create a new layer, change the color to brown, drop the brush size down, and ink the eyes and the mouth. Again, this is where you can take advantage of the pressure sensitivity and start off light and increase the size so you get this kind of super rounded, almost apostrophe shape. I'm gonna flip my canvas all the way around so it's easier to do on this side. Even though that's going to be hidden by the leaf, I still wanted to add the little eyelash there. Don't forget to switch to ivory and add those little dots. Switch the brush back to Florentine, choose pink, and color in those cheeks. Now we've got to ink the plant. So create a new layer, change the color to dark green, go back to the Liffey brush, and you can outline all those leaves. I'm just going to turn off plant 3 for a second just to make sure that I've completed this shape and it's fully enclosed. Now I can drag and drop to fill all those leaves. Now in this case, we want this leaf to be in front of the pot. So rather than dragging the leaves behind the pot to hide this section, we're just going to erase it. Remember, I've got the eraser tool set to the Stanley brush, and I've got the size down pretty low. It's at about 2%. We're going to turn the sketch off for a second, and then we're going to drop the opacity on that leaf layer down so that we can see the edge of the pot below it. That's just going to make it easier to get right up to the edge. I actually think I need to make this brush even smaller, so I'm going to go down to 1%. And then you can turn the opacity back up. Now let's turn on Alpha Lock because we're going to add lines to the center of each of these leaves. Change the color to Seafoam and change the brush back to Florentine. Go ahead and add a line down the center of each leaf. And if you're curious, I have the brush set to about 6% here. When you're all done, select those layers, group them, and you can name that group Plant 4. Let's move on to this plant. So we're going to select the layer with pot number 5, turn on Alpha Lock, change the color to dark salmon, make sure you've got the Florentine brush selected, and then go ahead and add the shading to the right side of that pot. Same process here, switch back to the original color, which is salmon, to soften that transition. Now create a new layer, make it a clipping mask, change the brush to Liffey and the color to brown. We're going to paint the legs on the plant stand. So just take your time outlining the edge right below the pot. And since we're on a clipping mask layer, you can erase or adjust as much as you need to. And again, we don't have to worry about coloring inside the lines. Go ahead and turn the sketch back on. Change the color to light salmon. And you can add a line of highlight on this same layer. It'll be partially hidden by that foreground plant, but that's okay. I'm going to add the pattern to this layer as well. I'm going to choose orange for mine. Feel free to choose whichever color you'd prefer. And just go ahead and ink that design. Create a new layer for the face. Change the color to brown. Drop your brush size down and go ahead and ink the eyes and mouth. Again, you can use the pressure sensitivity to your advantage for the eyes. Start off with light pressure, then increase the pressure as you move toward the inner corners. Go back to the Florentine brush, choose pink, and color those cheeks. Now let's create a new layer for the plant. Go back to Liffey and choose the color Chartreuse. Outline those stems and leaves. And then fill with color. Now turn off the sketch, drag the plant layer below the pot, turn on Alpha Lock. Let's go back to Florentine and change the color to dark green. We're going to do basically the same thing we did for pot number 3. We're just going to add a dark green line to the edge of each leaf. I'm actually going to add a couple smaller lines on each leaf as well. All right, this guy's done. So we can select all 4 of those layers, group them, and name it Plant 5. Just this guy in the background left. So let's go to the layer with pot 6, turn on Alpha Lock, change the color to light orange, and make sure you've got the Florentine brush selected. Add the shading. I'm going to start with a thin line on the bottom edge of the lip, and then add shading to the right side. And don't forget to soften and blend the shadow into the lighter color. Now there's no pattern on this pot, so let's go ahead and just add the highlight to this same layer. Change the brush to Liffey, go to the creamsicle color and make a lighter version. Add a curved highlight line on the left side, and you can also add a small horizontal line of highlight along the lip. Now create a new layer, turn the sketch back on, change the color to brown, and ink those eyes, eyebrows, and mouth. Don't forget to switch the color to ivory and add those 2 little dots to the eyes. Then go back to the Florentine brush and let's choose orange for the cheeks. All right, now we're going to create a new layer, change the brush back to Liffey, change the color to medium blue. First, ink all the stems, then outline all the leaves. And just be mindful that you're creating fully enclosed shapes so that it'll be much easier to tap to fill later. All right, and your outlines are all done. Drag and drop the first one, tap continue filling. Then you can just quickly tap all of those shapes to fill with color. Now let's drag that layer below the pot, turn off the sketch, and if you want to, you can add a little detail to each of those leaves. I'm going to switch to the color Seafoam, drop the size of the Liffey brush down fairly small. I'm just going to add a short line down the center of each leaf. Okay, now you can select those 3 layers, group them, and name the group Plant 6. And that's it. There's our cute collection of plant pals. I really hope you had fun with this drawing. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching!